we wanted to camber this wing, I would cut into it just a little and snip and snip. I've showed that before and it works great. But I am not going to do that here. What I am going to do is just tell you that now we need 2 standoffs to make this wing sit where we want it. Only we could make this sit out over the front to make it give it more lift up front, and that is actually what we want. And we have these. Now these are interesting little pieces because they are basically L-shaped, and if I cut it off on the bottom, they'd have a lip. See that lip? That lip is magic because that is an amazing VG right there. Only I'm not going to use it, and the reason I'm not going to use it is because I don't need it. What I need are a couple of standoffs that will create lift when the aircraft is flying on its side. I like to fly knife edge, and I want this little airplane to be capable. So I'm going to make these my struts for this side, which means I need to make a couple of them, and they don't want them to be that high. So once again, we're going to measure because we actually want to get it right. And we only have a limited number of materials, and it's almost exactly perfectly 2 inches, which means if I cut this at exactly 1 inch, we're good to go. Now it's awkward to hold it, and it's better to just have a pen and mark it, but believe it or not, if you've got good scissors, you can just come along underneath and make your mark, and now cut. And you'll be almost guaranteed to have it right every time. Now you pull it over and you trim off the little bit, because that's just fine. But I like this angle. I actually want it on an angle. So I'm going to make it a pretty sharp angle here. But now on the top, I basically need to match that angle. So what you do is you take this and we place it on this wing. And we see, if we place it here, and I'm placing this wing forward, I want this wing to sit flush at that point. But this might actually be the perfect height. I just looked at that, and that's actually sitting pretty high off of this. But that's a nice height. This will be a nice little biplane. So I'm going to stick with that height, and instead of trying to match this angle, I'm going to try and envision this as the flat of the wing and hold it flat. And now look at the wing angle that I want my main wing to be on, and cut it for that angle. So that when you place this on this, and this on this, you get the angle you want. And I can see I didn't quite get it, but I didn't ruin it, because all I've done, just make sure these are properly lined up here. All I've done is start the process of dialing in my angle. So now I sweep it just a little further back, and I can actually already tell that's probably not going to be quite perfect. I need to go just a touch more. There we go. That looks perfect to my eye. And I'll bet you that's going to be right. Look at that. See how that has that nice look? And now when I put this in place and I put the wing on it, it actually does come to a nice set of angles. And that's looking perfect. So now I'm going to take these two, and I'm going to put them one on either side of this. And then I'm going to try and line up the wing straight. It'll make it a lot easier to do when I have the two of these. I'm just going to wipe off any excess glue, and I'm going to make sure I'm putting them in the right direction and right at the edge of the VG right here. Should be just about right. And we're going to take this one and we're going to put that in place. And right at the edge of the VG. And we're just going to plant it down. But we didn't put it right at the edge. See that? It's close. Really close. But it's just off of it, right? So we're going to try and get these pretty close to perfect. Now that I've got these kind of in place, and I have a support there, now I'm going to look really. And you see that? So what you're going to do is you're just going to straight and level, and that's my goal. Okay? Pretty much, which I can see I didn't quite get there because I'm afraid to do the cut. That's the truth. I hate doing these cuts, but this is the part that you got to get right. So you lean back your scissors until you get into it, and now you just gently lower them until you get to the angle that you're looking for. Okay, and this is, you're going to see this is a lot closer, guys. This is looking to be the angle that I want, and this will be perfect. So I'm just going to put these together real quick without thinking or looking or freaking out about, oh, it has to be super precise or any of that. I'm just going to do it. I'm going to make sure my two leading edges are right. I'm going to make sure that the two are lined up and that it comes to the same place on this and just barely touches that leading edge like that. And make sure that they are both lined up, and they look like they are. Now just try and make them straight at the end. But look at the distance. Does that look right to you? Heck no. So what do we do wrong? Well, we put them in the wrong place, and that is a common thing. It happens all the time, guys. It's why I tell you to measure. Now this one actually seems pretty solid, and it is in fact where I want it, but that means I need to have it right here. So let's put it right where it needs to be. No messing about. And we are going to put this in its place. And it's going to be more permanent, because we've used a little bit more glue. And I'm just going to make sure it's about the same distance here. I'm making sure it's about the same distance here. And then I'm going to make sure the bottom of it at the end is just about at the same place, so that it comes to the same place on the other wing. Now I'm going to put a little bit more glue. See, now this is something else. This kind of stuff builds up on your workstation. If you want it neat, guys, have a clean workstation. It helps tremendously. All right, now I'm actually going to put this on something flat and walk the two together so that I have a rough guide or a template here. And this is looking much better. And now I'm going to shape this wing before it's too late and decide the final angle I want it to be on. And this is actually looking very good to my eye, but it kind of slipped there, and that is why you need to hold it. So now, looking at the bottom of this to see the edge. So first we checked for end to end, and we're actually going to trim it, believe it or not, if it's over on one side, to make sure there's no imbalance. And the weight of that trim will be nominal. It'll just make it so that it's nice and level, but I don't think we're going to need to really, because it looks pretty close. See that? I'm actually going to just a little, because this side is the same, but that means these two wings are actually slightly different size, and that's no good. So we're just going to trim it down so that they're about the same. And that means I trimmed down that VG too on the outside, but it also seems I need to trim this one just a tiny touch, a little less than the other one. And that's okay. I can correct the VG later, but this is a good way to build, and it makes sure that you're building in a way that is symmetrical, and it keeps the weight down, believe it or not, when you're trimming. So now we have a nice wing. We have both of these have a little lip that is adjustable. That is to say, you could increase the angle or decrease the angle depending on how much or how little lift you want. And I don't recommend you mess with this until you build it, and then you adjust it as you see it. So this is done, and I'm actually going to mount this onto the carbon fiber rod, and then the tail and this will be mounted. So now that you've seen the complete making of one of these, I'm going to cut out, because this has been probably the longest video I have ever done. And I can only hope and pray that you guys got a good view of all this. I'm going to show it to you close up like I always do. It's got VGs, and as you can see, I got it pretty close to even. I got it pretty close to symmetrical. With some basic measuring and some common sense, it's not horrible. It didn't come out bad. And I bet you money that it flies really, really well. One of the problems most of these guys make is that they're really not putting enough lift onto it for the amount of aircraft it has. But when you put this much lift, this will climb when you're on the throttle. This is going to be one of my Ultra Micro series, and the idea with this one is a 6-inch or less wingspan, which I will now verify for you one last time. Look at that. It's right around there. And what you have is just under 6 inches, guys. So this is the idea for this series. And what I'm going to do is this will be a 3mm motor, okay? Probably a little brushless. It'll be hopefully a double servo board. That way I can do the rudder and the tail off that servo board on the bottom inside the wing. And then on top of the wing there will be two. No, you got to do it on the bottom. So I'm actually going to do it the other way around and put the two little servo boards inside the wing underneath where the ailerons are to run that. And this one will have another board right in the center. So all three boards will be right here. And it'll run right out to the tail to do my two control surfaces, which is awesome. And then at the same time, be my receiver, hopefully. And if not, it'll be a lot of boards. I mean, it's 4 boards, right? So that makes for quite a bit. Now, if you get the right servo and you do the ailerons right, you can actually run them off one single servo. So we're going to talk about that later. For now, there are ways to do all kinds of things, and I'm going to show you the way I want to do it. And the reasons I want to do it this way are all flying. I want it to fly really well. And because I do, I know certain things about aeronautical engineering. I know certain principles of airplanes. And I know that this is actually going to be a sick wing. Now, I'm not done with the bracing. I'm actually going to make 2 more braces that hold the center of this, that come out a little farther and hold this angle in place at the front of the edge of the wing. But I don't want to do that. That's why I put these ones far enough back that they don't interfere with it, because I want to bend it and shape it once I put the weight on it to determine its final amount of lift. But with these VGs, believe it or not, guys, this will make a huge amount of lift and be really nice. Now, I did say that one of these is a little bigger than the other, but that's okay, because this one out here extends a little closer than this one does, and at the same time it's a little rougher, and it'll actually produce more lift, which means it'll compensate for that. But even then, that's a slight difference, and the fact that they work will be enough. You'll see they're going to work awesome. And this is designed, though, so you can do it as a couple of things. One, you can do it as a 2-channel, where you have just ailerons and throttle. And when you're on the throttle, basically what you do is you launch it at the height you want to fly it at a given throttle, and you just kind of put it into the air. And from there, when you put up the throttle, you'll climb, and when you drop it and push down, you'll dive. If you don't push down, it'll just glide, pretty much, with the prop turning at all. If you got even a little bit of power on, it'll fly beautifully, guys. That's the goal. So I want to keep it as light as possible and give it as much lift as possible, which is why this design. It will give tons of lift, but it would also keep it, and will, very, very light. So I will show you guys the rest of this build when it is finished, but for now, this gives you an idea of how to go about it. I've never really shown how to build a biplane wing in detail, but I did on my last video a little bit, but I wanted to go into it a little more detail and show you how to make them symmetrical and make them nice. Just measure and place carefully your glue where the measurements are, and you'll do just fine. Mark out where your glue needs to be, and then glue that, and then just place your piece in that, and you'll be fine. It'll lead you to be really close anyway. Okay, so that's it for this video. I love you guys, and I'll see you in the future. Enjoy your biplane. Keith out.